Hello there, and welcome once again to an exploration of Gurdjieff's teachings. It's high summer here, and I spent the weekend swimming in some ancient lakes, the forests flowing down into the water. I disturbed a group of sheep up by a beacon who were resting peacefully under the sun. Some of the men stood up and pointed towards me. I could see how embodied they are. They are so one with their body, you couldn't even put a sheet of paper between them. But for people it's quite different. Their relationship to their body is weak and lost. It made me wonder where our real body was. Surely we were meant to be just as embodied in our true body. I've been resting my eyes more and seeing with the outer field. It is as if the body fades away, and what is left is the shadow on the ground that I notice. It was interesting. I walked past some old stock English and small villages. The ancient confidence that I recognize from these kinds of people is because they are not in the flesh, they are in the spirit. They are what remains of the Britons of the spirit who lived before the modern era. In the past, society was stratified, with those in command and in leadership having a higher light inside of them, functioning actually from the higher bodies. Sometimes it was taken as a kind of aloofness. That happened often when there isn't any connection along the ray and the different stratas become isolated. As Gurdjieff says, the grandfather and grandmother gradually forgot, and all the relatives forgot also. Education needs time, it needs suffering. Life becomes less peaceful. At first they did not educate it through laziness, and later they forgot altogether. Does the teaching of Mr. Gurdjieff form part of some historical school still in existence? Was the knowledge that he possesses ever the property of a ruling caste? And was there any kind of civilization founded on it? For example, was there in India a government in the hands of people who wished to put into practice the ideas of Mr. Gurdjieff? Tibet is an example where 10 years ago all government was in the hands of the monks. But they couldn't put my ideas into practice because my teaching was not known to them. My teaching is my own. It combines all the evidence of ancient truths that I collected in my travels with all the knowledge that I have acquired through my own personal work. Tibet, India, and the West, these are the relics of something quite ancient. They have continued to practice various forms and rituals that in fact change the functions of the astral body and the mental body. That's what those practices do that we call yoga, Christianity, Judaism even. But for a long time, centuries, even millennium, they have not really understood what is happening inside their bodies or why, which is quite a frightening thing. Now, if I give an example, I do a particular movement called the marriage of heaven and earth. Qigong means it works with the astral body. I said I would do 20 of them, and when I got to 18 or 19, I recognized that I had been daydreaming, and that my heels, when they touched the ground, did not have the requisite softness and descending feeling that is required for the astral body to drain into the earth according to the movement. And so everything I had done had been false work, and I began again from 1. All spiritual techniques are like that. They're very, very subtle, and most people who do them do not know the subtleties. I was walking up an estuary at Rye Harbour, which is a small traditional fishing village on the south coast of England. There was a set of seals there, covered in mud and lying on the banks of the estuary. Occasionally one moved or growled or barked, and the energy rippled through them and they all shifted position in response. The waves rippling through the seals. When I feel those waves rippling, I feel them inside me, in fact, and that confirms what I see. Gurdjieff says, all the people you see, all the people you know, all the people you may get to know are machines. Actual machines working solely under the power of external influences. As you yourself said, machines they are born and machines they die. In response to that, Ouspensky says, how can that be true? There are intellectual types, there are artists, there are scientists. But Gurdjieff corrects him and says, no, they are all the same. Their differences are caused by the descending ray that creates people of different types. But they are machines in the sense that they are not responsible as individuals for their manifestations. Their manifestations are part of a background process. We live harboured and held within that background process and perform some function as part of the organic life on the earth. But the path is to leave this, to project forward and to gain control of your entire structure. A journey that it is even difficult to understand what it would mean. Eastern teachings contain various allegorical pictures which endeavour to portray the nature of man's being from this point of view. Thus, in one teaching, man is compared to a house in which there is a multitude of servants, but no master and no steward. Some, of course, are stronger than others, but it is not their own conscious strength. They have been created by the strength of accidents or mechanical external stimuli. Education, imitation, reading, the hypnotism of religion, caste and traditions, or the glamour of new slogans create very strong eyes in man's personality, which dominate a whole series of other weaker eyes. But their strength is the strength of the roles in the centres, and all eyes making up a man's personality have the same origin as these roles. They are the results of external influences, and both are set in motion and controlled by fresh external influences. Thus man has no individuality. He has no single big eye. Man is divided into a multiplicity of small eyes. But these are the factors that exist in the modern world that are actually received only by the personality and do not penetrate into the core of that person, and therefore serve only for the external dance of the personality. Ouspensky says this about Tibet. Tibetan monasteries are usually built in the form of 4 concentric circles, or 4 concentric courts, divided by high walls. Indian temples, especially those in southern India, are built on the same plan, but in the form of squares, one contained within the other. Worshippers usually have access to the first outer court, and sometimes, as an exception, persons of another religion and Europeans. Access to the second court is for people of a certain caste, or for those having special permission. Access to the third court is only for persons belonging to the temple, and access to the fourth is only for Brahmins and priests. Organizations of this kind, which with minor variation are everywhere in existence, enable esoteric schools to exist without being recognized. All the most brilliant periods of history, without exception, were periods in which the social order approached the caste system, but in which the principle of hereditary castes either was already weakening or had not yet become firm enough. Such were the brightest periods in the history of Greece and Rome, such was the epoch of the Renaissance, such was the 18th century in France, and such was the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century in Russia. These approaches were accidental and imperfect, therefore they did not last long and ended in catastrophes, and usually the higher the rise went, the deeper and more real was the fall. After such a fall, people are not willing for a long time to believe that the epoch of rise has passed and will not return again, and they seldom wish to understand that the very evil of the preceding period, that is, division between the classes of society, was the cause of the rise and growth of the culture. It is remarkable that an approach to a division in castes is almost always accompanied in history by one and the same phenomenon, namely by the formation of an independent intelligentsia. The formation of an intelligentsia is the beginning of the gathering together of people of higher castes, people who are not yet conscious of themselves and do not understand themselves, but who nevertheless act in accordance with the principles of their dimly felt caste. The characteristic features of the intelligentsia are always and everywhere the same. First, there is a craving for disinterested activity, then a very impatient feeling of the indispensability of personal freedom for all, and a very rebellious attitude towards everyone and everything standing in the way of freedom of thought, speech, and individual manifestations. In the conditions of modern life, that is, amidst all the absurdities of the present order of things, the intelligentsia becomes naturally revolutionary. It is very difficult to imagine the conditions in which the intelligentsia could be peaceful and loyal, or constructing anything outside the sphere of science and art. In the conditions of modern life, the intelligentsia is a destructive element. I walked into an old church on the weekend and was looking at the stained glass. Made in the 1930s, it was very striking and quite unusual. I was looking at the Christ in the east window for a few minutes, and then it dawned on me that he was standing on a rainbow. I remember this is 1930s. It was a time when the fist of Britain no longer held fast to the clutch of arrows that is a country, and some started to fall out. Above the Christ is a very unusual picture of a queen in a superior position. Theoretically, it is a strange-looking Virgin Mary holding a blue orb, which I'm to understand is one of the elements, probably the water element. When the ray starts to break up, what was inside of it, what was previously unified, starts to fall out. Here you have three separate things. The first is a call to the pagan elements from a previous era, and along with that, an idea of a distantly remembered female ruler. The third thing is that the artist was Douglas Strachan, who was Scottish, and the Scottish have a very ancient anger against England. The artist himself seems to be a strange man who never married and never had children. Some of the disagreements with the culture that this stained glass represent are quite petty, and some are extremely ancient. For instance, the memory of powerful beings men and women, from a very ancient time. And each of these complaints and traits may have merits in and of themselves, but they don't result in anything apart from to reflect passively and mechanically the decline of the nation. Well, let's hear from Mr. Orage now. We now have a basis for studying the possibility of planets ruling different organs, and by extension, the types which these receptive organs dominate. In other words, whether we like it or not, we find ourselves obliged to reconsider from a new and scientific point of view the general proposition of astrology, long discarded as an exact science, precisely for lack of scientific corroboration. The tradition of Greek, Arabic, and medieval astrology, which was inseparable from the parallel tradition of alchemy, believed all creatures on earth to respond in differing degrees to certain indefinable emanations of the fixed stars, the sun, planets, and moon. This response was by virtue of affinities, that is to say, different creatures contained in varying proportions substances or matters similar to those characteristic of the different celestial spheres, and whose potency waxed and waned in sympathy with the waxing and waning of their archetypes. These affinities were very complicated. All metals, for example, were supposed to have a general affinity for Saturn, while copper had a subsidiary sensitiveness to Venus, iron to Mars, and so on. Man was believed to contain within him all affinities, and these separate affinities were established in different organs and parts, though their exact allocation varied considerably from one person to another. From this it followed that a man who had one organ or part highly developed, whose centre of gravity lay there, so to speak, enjoyed a special affinity or sensitiveness for the corresponding planet. He was of that type. Well, that's very enjoyable to listen to, and truly the real world could be quite incredible. It's strange to see how mechanical and fallen humanity has become. Whilst I was out in Kent on the weekend, I managed to pick up a large quantity of my favourite green gauge plums, which have an incredible flavour and have a very short season, so I was lucky to get them. At the moment I'm doing about 4 hours a day, 2 long sessions and 2 short sessions, using technical methods from the Chinese arts and some other modern psychological work, most of which comes from American teachers. But I was very disappointed this week to read a book published in America, The Book of Five Rings, and I was immediately shocked to see that the publisher had changed the text, even though it says on the cover that it is a translation by the missionary James Legge. After 2008, the American economy started to crash and very evil things have started to happen in that country. It is the hallmark of a declining culture, I'm afraid. I say to myself that it doesn't really matter what happens today. It can be a good day or a bad day, but I must do my practices without fail. Okay then, you take care and have a nice week. Goodbye.
Take a little time to think things over. between the lines, in case I need it when I'm older. Now this mountain I must climb feels like the world upon my shoulder. Through the clouds I see love shine. It keeps me warm as life grows colder. In my life there's been heartache and pain. I don't know if I can face it again. Can't stop now, I've traveled so far to change this lonely life. I wanna know what love is. I want you to show me. I wanna feel what love is. I know you can show me. I'm gonna take a little time to look around me. I've got nowhere left to hide. It looks like love is fine.